Welcome to the halls of mediocrity, where legends are forgotten, journeymen are remembered, and serviceable, it's the highest honor that we know. I'm Kevin, this is Jeff, and yes, this hall is named after us. From second string stats to first degree charges, this is the halls of mediocrity. Welcome back, everybody. It is the halls of mediocrity. And Jeff, we have covered to this point 3 of the 4 major sports. We've covered the NFL, we've covered the NBA, we've covered MLB, we've also covered professional wrestling, but we're missing one of the big 4. And that is actually going to be our topic for this episode. Now, I don't know if you know this. Shaquille O'Neal is executive producer on a new show called Game Day Murder. It's on like ID, Oxygen, whatever that channel is. Guess what one of the cases was that he covered last week?
Oh, is this what he covered?
It is.
Ah,
that no good rotten guy beat us by a week.
Man.
But I suppose he's got gazillions of dollars. He's probably got a team to produce that show. We're a 2-man show.
Two-man show.
Fight like hell. We're scrappy.
We are.
That's exactly right.
Gritty. You know what? Just like the guy we're going to talk about. That's what he was. He was a scrappy, hard-nosed hockey player.
Indeed, he was. That is absolutely the truth. And our subject for this episode is a young man, well, he's probably not that young anymore, named Mike Danton. Now, if you're a hockey fan, you're not going to sit back and say, Mike Danton, oh my gosh, that Mike Danton? He is, in every way, shape, and form, the epitome of mediocre.
Yeah. His career was just getting started, Kev, when all this craziness happened. I shouldn't say his career, but his NHL career was just getting started. And professionally, on the ice, it looked like he was getting ready to make a step to become I don't know if I want to say a superstar, but to become a top-tier, aggressive, frontline center, forward-type player. You know, we're from Detroit. He was a Darryl McCarty type. He was a tough guy, but he could also score.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And boy, this is a story, Jeff, that is quite something. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what else to say other than that. And it's one of these stories, too, where all of the trouble begins in childhood.
It sure does. And you know what? We say it every week. This is an incredible, this is an amazing, this is a nut, this story is absolutely crazy. Guess what? They're all crazy or we wouldn't be talking about them, right?
That's exactly right.
Why we're talking about them. So let's talk about them. Let's talk about Mike Danton, okay?
Yep.
All right. Now, for those of you that don't know, NHL player, played 4 years, 3 years with the New Jersey Devils, 4th year in what ended up being his final year in the NHL. He played for the St. Louis Blues and honestly was having a good season with the Blues. And they made the playoffs. So, and he had a pretty nice playoff run, but none of that is what he's known for. He is known for April 16th, 2004. Just hours after the San Jose Sharks had knocked out the St. Louis Blues out of the playoffs, Mike Danton was arrested by the FBI. What was he arrested for, you ask? He tried to hire a hitman to kill his agent / former coach / mentor, David Frost, who ends up being as much of the story as Mike Danton ends up being on this one.
Yeah, really quick, Jeff, just for the sake of clarity here, and this is important. We're not talking about famous poet David Frost.
No, we're not talking about no. And just to clear names, David Frost is in no way related to Frosty the Snowman either. Just so you know,
Well, good, because
there's no
I
relationship.
I did have a note in the margins here to clarify that point.
Okay. There is no truth to that rumor. That rumor has absolutely no substance, Cal.
That is exactly right, Reinhorn.
So, but another crazy twist in this story is Mike Danton comes out and says, wait a minute, wait a minute. That's not even who I was. And by the way, he doesn't try and say, no, I didn't do that. He says, no, they've got it wrong. That's not who I hired the hitman to kill. I hired the hitman to kill my dad, my biological father. This story is crazy. And to this day, the FBI says he called to the hit was put on David Frost. Mike Danton to this day says, no, that's not who the hit was on. The hit was put out on my dad, who was super abusive, the whole 9 yards. So we'll talk a little bit more about it, but that's the story in a nutshell. But there's so much more to this story. As I was sitting researching it, it just kept going and going and go. I got so many notes on this.
So I want to sit back for a second, and I want us all to put ourselves in the shoes of the FBI agent as Mike Danton is explaining this. Oh, no. It wasn't for David Frost. I was trying to have my dad killed.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
The insanity of that. I mean, this is a guy who's not even trying to make the effort to say, hey, no, this is all wrong. I didn't do this. He's just saying, no. The actual plan was to kill my biological father, not David Frost.
Correct.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And you know what? I give Mike Danton a ton. You know, again, this is another one of these stories, Kev, as we go through and we talk about it. I actually got to like Mike Danton reading all of this. Mike Danton now clearly says, honestly, I was a 23, 24-year-old adult professional hockey player, and I was thinking like a 12-year-old. He says it now, point blank. He's like, I was not ready for any of this. I was still a child. And again, I want to go back and talk a little bit about, like you said, his childhood, right?
Mm.
So he grows up, and he doesn't even grow up Mike Danton. He grows up Mike Jefferson. And we'll talk a little bit about that because Mike Danton, he actually changed his last name to separate himself from his dad and his family. Okay? Mike claims he grew up in abject poverty. He never knew when he came home if the lights were going to be on, if the phone was going to be on. His dad neglected the family. He also says his dad beat him daily. He was abused daily. About the age of 14, which happens a lot with kids that are good hockey players, he goes off to play junior hockey. And he meets up with David Frost. And he goes and lives with David Frost, who is the guy that he's convicted of setting up a hit on. Depending on which story you hear, Kev, David Frost, he is a disciplinarian. A lot of people say David Frost is a cult-like figure. And there's some stuff we'll talk about with David Frost. So Mike lives with David Frost. And according to the Jefferson family, not George Jefferson, not
Okay,
Jefferson
good.
Cleaners.
Another note I had in the margin.
Yes, no, not George or Wheezy. It's not George or Wheezy. But the Jefferson family says no. And there's a story there too. The Jefferson family says no. He was not abused. And we really didn't have any problems until David Frost got involved. And once David Frost got involved, he started to alienate Mike from us.
So one thing that I think you're hitting on that's really interesting is there's kind of developing this he said type of thing, right? So Danton says, hey, I was abused as a kid. Don't know if the lights were on, don't know if there's going to be food on the table. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have his family saying, whoa, that is not at all what happens. And then off in the corner, you've got this David Frost character who, as you mentioned, has this almost cult-like personality. And if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking the same thoughts I am. How much of that abuse was real and how much of it was put into his head by a David Frost?
Absolutely. So I want to throw you a story here, Kev. Okay. Did you read about Mike's brother Tom at all?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay. So Tom Jefferson, his name is Tom. And just for clarity, Mike's dad's name is Steve Jefferson. Okay.
Yep.
So Mike is accusing Steve Jefferson of abuse from the time he was a little kid till he was 14 and he left. Okay. That's when he went to live with David Frost. That's when he's playing right junior hockey. And we'll go through the stats and all that good stuff. Tom Jefferson, who is Mike's younger brother, has a story, and he says this is when things really started to go south. Tom went to go stay with Mike for a couple of weeks at a cottage that they all had, and it was, him, his brother, and some of the players on the team, whatever team it was they were playing for at the time. And he talks about some pretty crazy, it's abuse. I mean, it is abuse. It's crazy shenanigans. And I don't know how deep we want to get into any of this. It wasn't what would be deemed sexual abuse, but it is what would be deemed crazy, ridiculous pranks that an adult should never be involved in with a kid, including stripping him down naked, making him run through the woods and climb a tree. And the game was he had to climb the tree, and until he climbed that tree and hit a certain branch, they all had BB guns and they were shooting them.
Yeah, so that's mental.
That's craziness.
That's mental, physical. If they're nude, it's sexual abuse.
That's craziness.
It's completely and utterly depraved.
He was there for 2 weeks. So this is Tom. This is his brother, Tom.
Right.
Tom came back home to the Jefferson house, and he tells them about this. First, their story is we didn't even believe him. It sounded crazy.
Because on the surface, it is crazy. What kind of disgusting human being would have kids doing that?
Yep, exactly. Now, after a while, they started to believe him. They went and they started going after David Frost, who at that point was in the process of alienating Mike Danton. And that's where everything went crazy. And that's where Mike Danton, who at that time was still Mike Jefferson, started to change his name to become Mike Danton. Craziness upon craziness upon craziness. So then, as we're talking about it to this day, younger brother Tom is in his dad's corner and says, look, yeah, did we have money problems? We have money problems. Mike's not lying there. We were stretched thin. We were, but he also says a lot of the reason we were stretched thin is we were paying for Mike to play hockey, which is not a cheap sport to play.
Well, and if you know anything about travel hockey and stuff like that, we know plenty of people who grew up in that.
That's right.
Type of environment. And to your point, it's friggin' expensive.
It's super expensive. But he states it pretty clear. To him, there was no abuse in that house. That is his story. So it's honestly, but Mike doesn't talk too much about any of this anymore. He doesn't speak with his dad. He doesn't speak with David Frost anymore, but he still stands by his story that his hit was on his biological father, Steve Jefferson, and not David Frost. Now, I want to throw a caveat to that, and then I'll kind of turn it over to you.
Yep.
So his dad, after hearing about this whole Tom Jefferson, Tom Jefferson, his younger son situation, now his dad wants to go after David Frost. Not only for that, but he's alienating his son Mike from him. In 2005, Steve Jefferson got arrested for making harassing phone calls to David Frost. Tom publicly defended his father in the media. That's the son, downplaying the calls as nonviolent, random messages that were really out of absolute frustration. And he states he was simply telling Frost his time is going to come and he should be ashamed of himself. All right. Mike, again, he claims they grew up in an abusive, they call it a squalid household under an aggressive father. Tom has historically supported his parents' versions of the events, that they were regular, supportive, hockey parents whose lives were completely derailed by Frost and his intrusion into their lives. So to this day, which side do you believe? I will tell you, when it comes to Tom, I 100% believe that story, because David Frost finds himself in more trouble later on down the line.
Yeah, so this David Frost character he's the linchpin in this entire story. And understanding what was really going on with David Frost is ultimately what will lead to actually knowing really what the chain of events was in Mike's story. So my opinion is, if David Frost doesn't have a bit of a reputation of being this commanding cult-like individual, I think you believe Mike Danton. But the fact that he does, what do all cult-like people have? The ability to manipulate and the ability to convince people to believe things that sometimes they know aren't true or they wouldn't otherwise believe are true.
Correct. So, as you go back to, so the early news reports that came out after Danton was arrested was Danton was afraid of David Frost. And he was afraid of him because Danton had threatened him with talking to the St. Louis Blues, which was the team he was playing for at the time, because he was drinking too much. He had an addiction to, he had an addiction to painkillers, which by the way, he admits to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
He just got it, he's in the NHL, got some pain. He's drinking too much. He does have an addiction to painkillers, and he was promiscuous at the time. I mean, he had a lot of girls and his life was crazy, which he now admits. Hey, I was 23 going on 12. I was like a 12-year-old. And when you think about what was going through his head, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Isn't that something that a ridiculous kid would think of?
It does.
I don't know if you read up on it. How this all came to light was, and again, I'm just going to go in generalizations. So Mike calls one of the girls he's dating, right? When I say one of the girls, because he admits he was, he was living the high life.
He's a pro athlete.
And
it happens.
And he was living the high life, who was only 19. And he tells her about all this. Yeah, well, this is what the FBI said. They tell, hey, he's worried. He's going to derail his career. Again, going back to cult-like, what do cult-like leaders do? They normally hold something over your head that they have on you, right? That's the control. So that kind of makes sense. That makes David Frost seem like the bad guy. I mean, sounds like he's the bad guy. She says, hey, I think I know somebody that could do that for you. She calls a guy. The guy she calls is a part-time police officer. And of course, he plays the game. Oh, yeah, we could set that up. Well, of course, what's the next call he makes? He calls the FBI.
Yeah.
And the FBI, obviously, then gets a phone recording. Bingo, bango. Mike's in jail.
Yeah. One of the things that we know, and we learned this in episode 1 with the Vikings, like if you don't want something to come out, the last thing you want to do is tell a teenager, college age kid, because chances are they're gonna spout off to somebody. And I think going back to your earlier statement where he's a 23, 24-year-old still with a 12-year-old's frame of mind, I think that's the type of person that is that careless and loose-lipped with information. He doesn't think about his audience. Like, wow, this is 19-year-old girl who is one of however many girlfriends. I probably ought not tell her this. Might be a bad idea, but he does it anyways. And as you say, that's kind of when the ball starts rolling down the side of the mountain.
That's right. So I'm going to go. I've got some notes just on the whole FBI investigation. Do you mind if I go through that real quick?
You go right ahead.
All right, perfect. So the FBI is pretty clear, and the FBI kind of opens it up to have this debate that, quite honestly, people are still talking about when you're talking about the Mike Danton situation. A male acquaintance, the original federal criminal complaint cautiously listed the intended victim as only a male acquaintance. Okay. Now, prosecutors argued Danton and Frost's intense controlling relationship had severely soured. The FBI alleged, and we just talked about it, Danton wanted Frost killed because he feared Frost was going to ruin his NHL career by exposing Danton's issues with promiscuity and heavy drinking to the Blues. Okay?
Yep.
That's what the prosecutors alleged. Now, Danton didn't even want this to go to trial because he knew he did it, right? He knew he did it. And in a way, I hate to say this, I think there was a part of him that was almost relieved. That he was almost relieved that a lot of these burdens were going to be lifted off of him. He pled guilty to federal conspiracy charges in July of 2004. He chose to bypass a trial. Crucially, the plea deal did not require Danton to explicitly name his target on the record, leaving the public in the hockey world under the assumption that Frost was the definite victim. So it really wasn't until he got out in 2009 that he starts talking about it wasn't about David Frost. It was about my dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, one of the things that I find so fascinating about this is I'm no fan of the FBI. If you've listened to me on my other podcast, the Midnight Mystery Archive, I have been very blunt that the FBI is, generally speaking, completely and utterly useless, and honestly, nothing more than a bunch of welfare whores.
100%.
But here's the thing with this story, is that I find it very hard to believe that the FBI's information would be so bad that they would be wrong that Frost wasn't the intended target. Now, the flip side of that is if you listen to Danton and some of the claims he makes about his home life growing up, if he had a motive to want to off anybody, you could make the argument it would be his dad, who he sees as the source of a lot of his problems. But what is one of the things that Frost does for Danton? What is one of his jobs for Mike Danton, Jeff?
We got a bunch. He's actually his agent.
There.
And
right there.
Yep.
He was probably in control of the purse strings. He was probably able to dictate where money was going and where it wasn't. that leads me to believe that Danton probably wised up to it to some degree and wanted him gone. Because guess what? Let's just name names of people who have been taken to the ringer by their agents. Gary Coleman. His agents were his parents.
Yep.
Right? There is a
Yes.
laundry list of people who have made significant amounts of money who are left destitute because of the wrongdoings of their agent. And when you have somebody like David Frost, who is perceived to be this very controlling and domineering person, you cannot convince me that he wasn't dictating what was happening with that money and Danton was getting the scraps.
Absolutely correct. And the other part to that, too, is he's holding stuff. You got to remember, he has been with Mike Danton since he was 14 years old. And we're going to talk about some of Danton's teammates who filed charges against David Frost in a few minutes here. I think he was holding some of those things against Danton, and Danton just didn't know where to turn. So let me finish up here. September 2009 is when Danton was granted parole. Now, just so you know, too, he spent most of his prison sentence was in the United States. About the last, I think, year to 6 months, they actually moved him to Canada, which is where he wanted to go all along. And he actually uses that as part of the reason why he didn't set the record straight. Look, it's the U.S. I didn't trust their system. He's a Canadian. I wanted to get back to back to Canada. I just wanted to play ball and go, and that's what he did. So he spent the last about 6 months in Canada. So, in 2009 is when he denied ever trying to kill Frost. Instead, he revealed his intended victim was his biological father, Steve Jefferson. He does admit, and again, I believe Mike. With all of this stuff, I believe him. Danton explained that in 2004, he was experiencing a severe psychological breakdown fueled by deep-seated trauma. 100%, I get it. So it's hard for me to be that mad at him. A heavy reliance on sleeping pills and prescription painkillers. He was drinking a ton at the time as well. He didn't put that in there.
Great combination.
Yep. And he erroneously believed a hitman from Canada was traveling to St. Louis to kill him. That's what he thought. The mix-up apartment plan. Danton admitted he panicked and launched a preemptive strike by hiring his own hitman to kill the person he believed was coming to murder him. Because he expected his father to be the one coming to his apartment to confront or harm him. His father was the true target. Danton stated that Frost only became associated with the hit list through a severe operational mix-up and assumptions made by the FBI. This is where a lot of people think Mike Danton is full of it, and he just doesn't want to be in the crosshairs of David Frost. He hadn't seen his dad since he was 14 years old. Now, he said he was paranoid, but his dad was not coming to his apartment in St. Louis. The only person that would have gone to his apartment in St. Louis that somebody could have been there for to execute the hit would have been David Frost. So,
yep.
So,
yeah, the whole situation, this whole story is just it's so strange. And I think one of the things that I find the most strange about it is the fact that Danton at this point, he's only a year younger than me. So he's 45, 46.
Yep.
I don't believe he's being honest.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. But I'm also going to say this. It's okay. It's okay if he's not being honest, because guess what? It's really just for us to say, well, I know who. But this guy was messed up.
But here's the thing, is the fact that I don't believe he's being honest. to me, gives a guy like David Frost, somebody who probably should be investigated for something, it gives him a pass.
Well, for sure, it gave him a pass. Well, one, it gave him a pass because he didn't get the hitman didn't get him, but it also gave him a pass too. Although a lot of his, he went on trial in 2006. Or
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
I think the trial didn't start till 2008, and we'll talk about it a little bit.
yep.
But yeah, David Frost has felt has felt the heat from this. And there's a lot of NHL players too that said, "Hey, yeah, David Frost was always around Danton." They said it was weird. It was a weird relationship. And I don't doubt it. I mean, it was. It obviously
Yeah,
was.
I don't, not for a second either.
Yeah, and I will tell you, so Mike Danton, did you read about Mike Danton, what he did after he got out of
Yes.
prison?
Yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, honestly, I think prison really helped him.
Yeah, I think he's one of those examples where it probably did, because I know he was taking correspondence courses while he was in jail.
Got a psychology degree while he was in jail. And he said that's a lot of the reason why he went into psychology, was he wanted to figure out what happened with him.
Well, yeah, and I was just going to say, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think you're allowed to psychoanalyze yourself because you're probably only going to get the answers you want to hear.
Correct.
But I'm sure that was one of the motivating factors.
Yeah. And it's crazy. So he ends up going back somehow. I don't know how this happens. He gets to go play hockey in college for a college hockey team. They actually won like the Canadian National Championship or the equivalent thereof.
Yep.
Here, let me hold on.
St. Mary's University in
That was it.
Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Yeah, that was it. Hey, you know what? Before let me go back a little bit. Some of these OHL in junior hockey league stats, he was a stud. He
Mhm.
was a stud player. He played 12 games for the Sarnia Sting too. At that point, he would have been Mike Jefferson. 12 games. He had 6 goals in 12 games.
That's pretty solid output.
And a lot of penalty minutes, which means he was a fighter too. So
Yeah.
he probably had a couple Gordie Howe hat tricks. Do you know what the Gordie Howe hat trick is?
No, so Jeff, hockey is more your lane than it is mine.
Goal, an assist, and a fight.
Goal.
A lot of games, a goal, an assist, and a fight.
Yeah, well, I don't know they keep that in the record books, but it's quite a feather regardless.
Yeah, how about this? So 99, so the 99-2000 season, he played for the Barrie Colts, which is an OHL team. 58 goals, 58 games, 34 goals, 53 assists, so he's averaging more than a point a game, and 203 penalty minutes.
That's pretty impressive.
It is impressive. So he was a stud in the OHL and in the juniors, and then obviously he, had his 4 years in the NHL. 2009 gets out. Plays 09-10 in the 2010 and then the 2010 and the 2011 season at St. Mary's. Has a pretty good run there. And you know what? A lot of the teammates there say he was such a nice guy. And he was really there to play the role like he wanted to be there. He wanted to help the team. But the thing he was very adamant about, and what really endeared him to the coaching staff and the team, he didn't want to take other guys' time either.
Mm-hmm.
I think he knew, hey, I was an NHL player. These are college kids. For most of them, this is probably it. So he was honestly everything other than that probably couple months he spun off the rails. He seems like such a solid guy. That's why, there's so many unanswered questions in this story. I hate to even open it up and speculate, because overall, he's a nice guy that had a ton of trauma as a kid, whether it be from Steve Jefferson, David Frost, or what it probably was both of them.
The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think you're exactly right. And to your point, I think one of the things that's really interesting about him is this is a wild story. he freely admits he was hiring somebody to murder somebody. Not a good look for anybody. But he's a guy who did his time. And since he was released, you talk about his, he continued his education. He got his education, psychology. He played college hockey, which is just the whole idea of it after playing in the NHL is kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
But, now he's become a junior hockey coach. He's married. He has 3 kids. It's
It,
kind of like he seems like he's pretty well adjusted. He is, in my opinion, one of those few cases where prison did him good.
well, prison did do him good. And you know what? So in this story really intrigued me. I YouTubed, and there's a couple of interviews he did. One when he was at St. Mary's, and he talks about one of the things that scares me the most is I want to be good for myself, but I want to be good for somebody else. I want somebody to want to be with me. And that person I was, nobody would want to be with me. And he did, a lot of it was him fixing himself, which at the end of the day is all he could do. And it really, I admired him. I admired him with how he handled it once he left. How about this for a story? Do you know what happened? So he plays 2 years at St. Mary's.
Yep.
What happened his first professional game that he plays in Sweden? Do you know?
No, I don't know that I saw what happened in his first game.
Kev, this is a story. So, sometimes people say, God's got a plan. Who knows what God's plan is? Danton, I'm going to read this to you. First game back. A team in Sweden's 3rd division professional league. It was called IFK Or, okay? And he was named the team captain during the 3rd period of the season opener against Soderham. I don't know. That's what I don't know.
We don't speak Swedish, so apologies to our Swedish fans.
Exactly. We're big in Sweden. I look at some of the numbers.
I hate to quote Ira Einhorn, but I may have to do that. It's a rumor that has absolutely no substance.
Danton's 21-year-old lineman, Marcus Bengstein, took a heavy late hit, and Mike Danton saved his life. Listen, so Bengstein takes a big hit, fell headfirst onto the ice, and was immediately knocked out cold. Okay? Seconds after the impact, he's laying on the ice, and his body went into violent convulsions, and he began having a severe seizure. While all the players panicked, Danton immediately recognized the danger. He dropped to the ice alongside his convulsing teammate. Why? Prison training. During the 5.5 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder, Danton had used his time to become a certified first aid responder. He later noted on his blog that he had witnessed inmates who frequently went into violent drug withdrawal seizures while on the streets or in jail. Knowing that time was critical, Danton waited briefly for the moment Bengstein's jaw unlocked and unclenched slightly. Danton jammed his fingers deep into Bengstein's mouth, physically grabbing and clawing his tongue to prevent him from choking on it and swallowing blood. And then, while Danton was clearing his airway, he instructed the 2 other teammates to take Bengstein and roll him to his side so he could recover until the ambulance could get on the ice and get him out. Bengstein was rushed to the hospital, had a severe concussion, made a full recovery, but says it, I would be dead if it wasn't for Mike Danton being on the ice with me.
So, to me, that story, I'm listening to it, and I kind of getting chills listening to it. Because to your point, I'll just be honest with you, I don't really care what you think. But like you said, God has plans for people. And I don't know that you could write a better postscript for a guy who clawed his way back, went through school, playing professionally again in Sweden, and his first game, some of the skills that he learns while in prison, he uses it to save a teammate's life. I mean, that's a great story.
He honestly, think about that. God has a plan for God, and who knows? Who knows? But he had a plan. He had a plan. And going back, so he ends up playing. He wanted to get back to the NHL. It never happened. So he plays in the Sweden division for 27 games. Then he goes and plays in Italy. He goes back to Sweden in 2012 and 2013. He talks about it in interviews. A lot of those leagues, something always happened. They started missing your paychecks. They were, they're paying for you for an apartment somewhere. All of a sudden, they're booting you out of the apartment because they're not paying for it. His last 3 years that he played professionally, he actually played in Poland in a Polish league. It's STS Sanak. And again, I'm probably saying that wrong, but those were his last 3 years. And he said that was that was his best experience outside of his short time in the NHL. He got paid. He loved the fans. The fans loved him. There is a senior league in Quebec. He did play 33 games there, but really that was the end of his professional career. And again, you talked a little bit about what he's doing now, right? So
what about David Frost? What's old Frosty up to?
Old Frosty. Well, so David Frost continued to, he had players, he had his junior teams. Well, 2006, he gets arrested in Canada. Believe it or not, he gets arrested. So following a 2-year investigation by the Ontario Provincial Police, Frost was arrested August 2006. He was originally hit with 12 counts of sexual exploitation and 1 count of assault involving 4 teenage boys and 3 teenage girls. Okay, now you got to go through the whole thing here, Kev. By the time the trial began in October of 2008, prosecutors had dropped the majority of the charges due to insufficient evidence, which you also have to remember, this is before the smartphone. This is before the well, maybe there you're just getting into camera phones.
Yeah, on your little
phones
flip
with
phone or something.
videos. Yep. The final indictment, Frost faced 4 counts of sexual exploitation. These counts technically named 2 of his former 16-year-old male players from the 96, 97, and Kev, help me. Which this is also the team Mike Danton played on. This was one of Mike Danton's teams that he played on. The Desorento Quint Hawks junior hockey team as the victims. Under Canadian law, Frost was in a legally defined position of trust or authority over the players, making sexual exploitation a crime, even if they theoretically consented to it. Now, it gets crazy. And I don't know how much we want to talk about all this stuff, but he, again, in cult-like fashion, it's not exactly what you think it would be. He was kind of giving the players directions on what to do with their girlfriends, and it was very cultish. I'm just going to leave it at that. It was very cultish.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So really quick, this is kind of a weird scenario, right?
It's
so he's got kids
and weird.
climbing up the trees nude and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not what you would consider traditional sexual abuse, but the kids are nude, right?
Yep.
Okay, granted, telling somebody to do something is not sexual abuse in the traditional sense. But it's still sexual abuse because these are underage kids, and
he's the leader.
And he's the ringleader telling these kids what to do. The guy is a complete shitbag.
he's a dirtbag. He's a dirtbag. Now, I just want to give all sides, okay? So please, Kev, I'm 100%. He is a dirtbag. He's garbage. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's too much smoke around this guy. Go back to the Tom Jefferson, Mike's younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
He swears he says he believes him that it happened. He was nowhere around. If he was guilty of anything, he was guilty of just not knowing what the guys were doing. That's what he claims there. Here, he kind of claims the same thing. And listen to this. This is what makes me want to puke with this guy. The defense strategy. So Frost hired a high-profile defense attorney, Maria Heninen. The defense approach focused on aggressive cross-examination and highly controversial characterizations of hockey culture, which again, I think that's a bunch of bullshit to begin with. So a lot of this stuff was normal with junior players. That's what she said. She denied, she attacked the credibility of the people that came forward, said they were just trying to get their 15 minutes of fame on the back of Mike Danton. And here's the biggest problem with it. The biggest problem with it is it worked. He was acquitted of all those charges. Now, garbage, complete piece of garbage. And again, I guess I believe Mike on both fronts. I think there was some crazy weird stuff going on with this guy, and he was probably getting beat up by his dad too.
Yeah, I think there's the potential for that.
I'm sorry. This is horrible. So let's go back and let's talk about this piece of
shit.
David Frost. So David Frost. What do you do? So David Frost, what do you do? You've been acquitted, right? Don't you wanna build your name up?
No, you want to create an alias.
Yeah, and that's what he does.
Of course he does.
He moves to California. He starts training hockey players, but he changes his name so nobody knows who he is. What a little bitch. What I swear to you.
Well, and to me, this is just my own personal opinion. If you want to convince me that you're not guilty of something, don't change your name.
That's to me, that's a telltale sign that you are guilty.
100%
that's a telltale sign
correct.
That you are guilty.
I agree.
And again, I don't want to, but these players came forward. And I guess the good news is a lot of from this trial, it really took a look at, some of that hockey culture too. And I think a lot of it's a lot better now. Although, a lot of hockey players, because again, I can tell you, and back in the day, I used to be big on the local team here, and I talked to a lot of those guys, and they said that stuff doesn't always happen. It's everywhere, everywhere. There's some debauchery everywhere. But I said, no, that's not it. That's not everywhere. No.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the way it always is. There's probably a little hint of it in places, or maybe every place. But the idea that it's widespread and constant is it's complete. It's so low IQ to think that.
And this David Frost, I'm sure where he was, there was all kinds of garbage going on because he was the ringleader of it. You heard it. He was cult-like. So
I don't know if you saw this, but I thought it might be interesting. I'm not sure if it's true, but the rumor is that he changed his name to David Chili. Is this correct? He wanted something that would really give him good cover.
Yeah, I heard his name was so run through the mud. He actually changed his name to Jeff Galooly.
Cut it out, Galooly.
David Frost probably would have been better off changing his name to O.J. Simpson. Quite honestly, let's be honest. Piece of garbage.
Yeah, so what a shitbag.
It's terrible. You know what? But I do want to say, and I'll throw it over to you, but I do want to applaud Mike Danton. And again, who knows, right? We've talked, I don't know what happened. I'm going to believe his story. I'm going to believe his story because guess what he did? He put in work. He didn't go to trial. He didn't try these BS defense games that David Frost did. He said, no, I did it. I did it.
Yeah. And I think my takeaway is very similar to yours, Jeff. It's this: nobody died. Right? We're talking about Hitman, and nobody died.
Right.
He admitted he was hiring the hitman, regardless of who actually he was hiring to have killed. He does his time, and truthfully, he comes out and he's a model citizen.
He trains young hockey players now.
That's fantastic for him. And I think it's one of the nice endings to some of the stories that we'll cover.
Yep. Married, 3 kids. He talks a lot. There's a couple we could go on for 4 hours about this, Kev. I went through a couple, and there's some misinformation too out there. He did a few interviews. And he talks about some of the things, and some of there's things that got twisted too. A lot of people made it out like he's a liar and he's whatever it is. And honestly, at this point, it doesn't matter. That's his life. But he put in the work where a lot of people would have given up. And I give him a lot of credit for that. He's married, 3 kids, by all accounts, good husband, good dad, good coach. Trust me, if you give me a choice who I'm sending my kid to, I'm not sending him to Frosty. I'll send him to Mike Danton all day.
Yep, and I think that's exactly the way that we should end this. Now, everybody who's been listening, we could use a little bit of help. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, to Spotify, and leave us a review. It helps bring new people to the audience and to the show. The other thing you can do, head on over to YouTube. Follow us there. You'll get video content. Who doesn't want to see these beautiful bald faces every week? I know I do. So make sure you head on over to YouTube and click the subscribe button. Then, we're not just on YouTube, folks. We're on Facebook. We're on X. And we're on TikTok. If you want to hear some funny clips from the show, head on over, follow us on our social media. We're glad to have you, and we cannot wait to have more people joining this community. Jeff, that was a great story and a great ending.
It was a good ending. One of them that ends real good, really. It's tough to listen to early on, young years, but ended phenomenally for him. And God bless Mike Danton.
Yep. Jeff, what are we talking about next week? Do you remember who's on the list for next week?
Time for the Superfly, Kev.
That's right, brother. I'm going to be bringing my coconuts.
Let me tell you something, brother. This right here, you know what this sign that means? I love you.
Wow, that was something else.
Actually, that was actually a promo he did.
I know. I remembered it watching you do it. So here's the thing that I'm going to promise you. And I'm going to promise our listeners this too. By the end of next episode, you will have a big bump on your head from me smashing you with a coconut.
Oh, Kev, you better hope I don't find a 15-foot high steel cage, because I'm going to the top. Whether Lou Albano says I can or not.
That's right, folks. The Jimmy Snuka story is one that is something else.
And that doesn't end so well.
That does not end so well either. We're having fun with it, but it is some serious business. Jimmy Snuka, in my opinion, is a murderer, and we will let you decide next week. We will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.